Hello there, and I'm excited to come your way today again on PM Personality Profile. I'm Emefa Adeti. Now, in a country where democratic institutions are under intense scrutiny, where people are very concerned about the governance of a country and its people, there are very few voices that will bring clarity to your thoughts, and there are very few persons that you will go wanting to find what they have said and their opinion will really matter because they shape the discourse. Today, I'm having a great conversation with Dr. John Osae, a political scientist who brings to the fore a wealth of knowledge on political science, governance, democracy, including the many books that he has authored, shaping the democratic conversation in this country. Welcome aboard to PM Personality Profile. Welcome back to Personality Profile, and I've been telling you about my guest, but rather today, he won't be contributing to the sciences behind politics or maybe governance as you may, and I know that every time you want that little apport on what's happening in the country, who is saying what, he'll be the one you'd be referencing. Today, we put all of that aside and get to know him even better. What has influenced where he is up to today? What are some of the things that have been guiding him all through his life? Why did he even write all of those books that he has written that you and I sometimes go to reference when we're having political conversations in this country? And so again, welcome to Personality Profile. And Dr. John Osae, thank you for making time for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have you been?
So far, so good.
Right. Well. Which of the countries do you like to be in Ghana or abroad mostly?
Both. But I enjoy coming home. It's always nice coming home because I still have family here. My mom is still around. My older brother is still around. And I still have two older sisters who live here. Then, of course, there are my friends, schoolmates, some of whom are still around. And then, of course, there's my association with CDD Ghana.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to come back home. In fact, I think since 2015, I've had the opportunity to come home a lot more often than I used to when I first left Ghana to go to the US.
Why particularly since 2015?
I think since 2015, there's been a lot more flexibility with work, but also I've become more engaged, in the governance space, particularly with my association with CDD.
Right.
So there's been opportunities to come back home.
I mean,
do you mind if I?
Of course, please do. Yeah. I mean, let's start from home because you say that you like to come home. Were you born in Ghana? And which part of Ghana were you born in?
Yes, so I was born in Ghana all the way back 23rd February 1974. From what I understand, I was born at Legon Hospital, so the original Legon Hospital. I'm a twin, by the way.
Are you?
Yes. I have a twin sister.
Okay.
Yes, so...
which one are you, the Penyi or Kakra?
I'm Penyi.
You're Penyi?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I understand, at least for us, the Penyi is the one who comes out to make sure the world is safe before they ask the younger one to join them.
And that would be for their accounts?
Yes, that would
right?
be for their accounts.
Okay.
Yes. So, born Legon Hospital. So my twin sister and I are the last borns. Grew up in Ghana, raised by a single mother. So my dad passed when I was 3. I was still in nursery school, Lilliput Nursery. Then from Lilliput Nursery, I went to Bishop Howes Primary School. So I was in Bishop Howes from class 1 to 7. People don't believe it when I tell them how much I hated school as a kid. Yes, so Bishop Howes was just about a 3-minute walk from my house. So I remember a few times in kindergarten where I'll just run home. And then Miss Holdbrook in particular will come get me, take me back to school. In class 1, Miss Daisy was Mrs. Akwe was my class teacher. I was in class 1. My class was called 1 Daisies.
Okay.
So one time my mom had traveled, and whenever she would travel, she would ask her older sister to come take care of us. Now, she was a really cool aunt. You could do whatever you want.
You wouldn't go to school?
And she wouldn't say anything. So that morning, I woke up and I say to her, I have a tummy ache. So she's like, that's fine. You can stay home. Fortunately for me, a very good friend of my mom shows up. She's She's like, why are you home? I was like, oh, Miari. She's like, no. She was, of course, she knew my tricks. She's like, nah, I don't think we are. So she gave me a bath, dressed me up, walked me to school. And then we get to Bishop Eyes. Mrs. Akwe looks into my bag, and I have, class 1 homework, writing small additions. I'd piled up my homework for for weeks. The only thing that made me change my attitude towards school was, I think somewhere maybe class 4, class 5, my mom says to me, by the way, my mom is a cocoa farmer.
Oh, she's a cocoa farmer.
Yeah, so she says to me, look, if you don't think you want to go to school, that's fine. I can take you to Bno Ahafo to go help my caretaker to work on the farm. And then as young as I was, I weighed the options. I'm like, okay, at least in Accra, I have water, I have electricity. Stories my mom tells me way back then, I'm like, okay, you know what, that's fine. I'll just stick with the school thing. And so, of course, after Bishop Hours, I went to St. Peter's.
But by this time, where was your sister? Because you're twins.
So, yes, my twin sister, 2 very different personalities. I'm the one, being mischievous, naughty, little fights here and there. Elsie, on the other hand, is the quiet, unassuming one, barely says anything.
Oh.
Yes. So.
Interesting. For an academic, I still cannot wrap my head around why you would not like school. And I like the trick your mother used. You either farm or you go to school. So you chose your poison.
Yes, I chose my poison only because where her farm is, right, like no electricity, things like that. So you're a kid growing up in the city, and if you're told you'll be sent to that remote village, it's called Agrafi in the Bno region. The Bno Ahafo region. Okay. So that's where I made my choice. St. Peter's, Form 1 to Upper 6. When I finished, so I was part of the old system. When I finished Form 5, I briefly thought of going to Achimota for 6th form, only because they offered government as one of the A-level subjects. And at that time, St. Peter's didn't offer government. So I thought about it, but then I would think back to new students who would come to 6th form in St. Peter's, and for 2 years, they're still treated as a new student, right? Some of them do well assimilating. So I used to say to myself, is this what is going to befall me if I go to Achimota for 6th form? If that's the case, then let me just go back to St. Peter's for 6th form.
You must have struggled going through the process of education, but it turns out that you have become a source of reference for many of us here in this country. If not what you're saying, what you've written or what you have researched somewhere, and then we're referencing it. We'll walk through the journey very much, but I hear you say your mother's farmland was in Bno Ahafo region. You've lived parts of you here in Accra because of the schools that you've referenced. But where are you originally from? So originally we are from Ekropong, Ekuapem. Okay. Yes. So both parents are from Ekropong, Ekuapem. Yes. You mentioned that if you're going to go to Achimota, then you were going to read government. I see where the journey to political science may have started, but what informed it? Why? So when I was a kid, I was also always interested in listening to the news, watching the news. And I remember saying to my mom that someday when I grow up, I want to be a prime minister. Didn't know what the prime minister did, but she had a neighbor who was a lawyer by profession, had some gray hair, so once in a while I'll put a little powder in my hair. I'll say may his soul rest in peace. I'll say I'm loyal for Suhine, but rather than being a lawyer, I would rather be a prime minister. Then I got interested just listening to the news, who is the Secretary of Education, who is PADC Secretary for this, all of those things. I'll listen to my mom talk about politics, government, with family, with friends. By the time I got to secondary school, and of course, back then, every smart kid is expected to read the sciences and become a doctor, a medical doctor. So my mom's idea was that I'll become a medical doctor. So Form 1, Form 2, everybody's saying I'll do science. But I also noticed that by the time I got to Form 3, I was struggling with subjects like physics, chemistry. I remember I used to get like 16% in physics, 30 in chemistry. Biology that I'll do well, I'll get. I'm embarrassed hearing it. Yes. So I'll say to myself, but what kind of doctor, even at Form 3, is struggling to pass the basic science subjects?
But then I was doing well in history, in English literature. So I said, you know, maybe the science path is not my path. I didn't know there was anything called political science, but I knew there were things around history, politics that interested me. So when you get to Form 3, you get to choose in Form 4 what subjects you study for O-level, whether you do the science track, business, or arts. So I chose arts, but I was afraid to tell my mom that I won't do science anymore. So I wrote her a letter, and I said, the assistant headmaster says I can start with arts, but at some point I can change back to science. And my mom looks at me, and whenever you're trying to lie to my mom, she would look at you and you say, Jamaica will say, so she knew, yes, she knew I was just making some story up. But yes, so I did all of that through level. So I did history, economics, English literature. I was enjoying studying those subjects. I'd wanted to do government for A-level, but I got back to St. Peter's. I did history, economics, Christian religious studies as part of my A-level. Then after that, the interest was deepening. In fact, in St. Peter's, sometimes during prep time, I would tell the class that, you know, I'm the Prime Minister and I'm giving an update on the country, you know, so this is the state of the economy, things like that. So most of my friends, classmates from St. Peter's, are not surprised that I studied political science.
We'll walk through the journey up until you even earning yourself a PhD in it. But I'm quite curious how your mother, you lost your father when you were just 3. Did you remember the events? Have they told you how it happened? Did they tell you? Do you remember?
So eventually my mom and I spoke about it. So she tells us that I think she was supposed to go to, he was working in Kofodia then. So he had gone on pension. He was a public servant. So he had gone on pension, but doing some work for local government. So he fell sick in the office in Kofodia. And then by the time they rushed him to St. Joseph's the next morning, he had passed. The only thing I mean, like there are 2 memories that I have. So one time myself, him, my twin, and then my 2 other siblings, we went to, his post office box was at Jamestown. So I recall going to Jamestown. He drove some really old car. The car broke down. He got some people to push it for him. And I remember he pulled out a coin and gave it to them to, you know, to thank them. Then I recall a yellow VW bus in front of our house one day, and I have an older sister in the US, Stabner, and she just took us away that day. So in my adult years, one day I asked her, I said, what was that about? Because I still get pictures of that. And she's like, oh, that was the day they brought the body home on the way to the mortuary. So they wanted you guys to leave the house. Like, oh, okay.
Did you think that things would have been a lot different if your father was alive? I mean, in fact, now that you have mentioned local governors, public servants, I see where maybe the interest in watching the news, because of course, public servants, he needed to know what's going on.
Exactly.
What probably Joy News is saying at the time, if it existed, or I'm sure it would be GBC at the time, but I see where. But again, back to your mother and maybe the entire family, 2 memories, going to the post office, that buzz, bringing the body and all. And your mother, do you remember, do you recall how she journeyed through life with you? Did she ever remarry?
No, she didn't. And I'll tell you a funny story. So she dated a gentleman, may his soul rest in peace. His last name, so this is why, years later, I asked my mom, so how come you didn't marry that man? And she says, one day the man says to her, if we get married, would you change your name? My mom says, you know, I told him that this name was Sayenkwapo because of my late husband, you know, and his work and his, you know, the network that he built. I feel like it's more recognized. If I knock on doors and I say I'm Aliso Sayenkwapo, the doors get open. But your name is not a name that people recognize in Ghana. So, Charlie, I'm not sure if we get married and I change my name, it will be a good idea. I won't. So apparently the man took offense and ended the relationship. I asked my mom, so how did you feel about that? She's like, oh, what nonsense.
Because of course, I've had all my kids, if I wanted to, I have enough, and I want to keep the name that I think would open the doors for me.
But she I always say that she didn't make us feel the impact of the loss of our father, because she played both roles extremely well. I mean, she was extremely strict, she was a disciplinarian, but she also made huge sacrifices. She always would emphasize education, right? That it was your ticket out because of some of these challenges. So if my mom had to travel miles, if she had to look for the money to buy you a textbook, to pay your school fees, whatever she had to do to make sure you got a good education, she would. So you can also imagine her frustration when I won't show interest in school. You know, yeah, but she played the role very well. I mean, she made quite a lot of sacrifices.
Reading about you, I noticed that you did a lot of education abroad. At what point did you leave the country?
So I left Ghana in '96. So I tried the US visa lottery, and I won after my national service. So after A-level, I did my national service in Benso, oil palm plantation, Bob. So they had a school. I used to teach cultural studies and social studies. And then in the middle of that, I won the US visa lottery. So I finished national service, worked briefly with Commercial Associates, it's a printing press. So worked there for a little bit, about maybe 4 or 5 months. And then I left for the US. When I was leaving for the US, I had an admission to a particular university. So of course, in my mind, New York is New York. And my older sister lived in New York City.
Okay.
So I get to New York City, and I call my admissions counselor. I said, Amy, I'm in New York. How do I get to Houghton College? She says, how are you coming? And of course, we lived close to the train station. I was like, oh, the subway is just here. She burst out laughing, and I don't get it. She's like, no, 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 no. The school was actually 7.5 hours from New York City. So it would have meant going from New York to either Rochester, New York, or Buffalo. And then the school picks you up to... So I'm thinking, no, no.
Oh, my goodness.
So I started my education at a different college after 1 semester. Then I transferred to Houghton, studied political science.
I mean, beyond the institutions and everything that looks like works in America, what were you missing most when you were there back home? When you were in the US, what's one thing that you say, oh my God, we will fianca?
The food, right? So when I first got to the US, because I lived in New York City, the part of Queens where we lived had a big Ghanaian community, and we had 2 African markets. My sister, after her night job, during the day, she made wache and kenke. Right? So I always had Ghanaian food at home. But then when I went to the college where I got my first degree, small rural town in upstate New York, the school population was about 1,200 students. My 3 years there, we didn't have any more than 20 black students on campus. So I get there, and you have to eat in the dining hall, and the food is bland. I remember one time, a couple of my friends said, hey, there are some hot wings down the street. Let's go get them, right? And I take the first chicken wing, and I'm eating it. And I'm like, you call this hot? Nah.
You're not eating pepper from Ghana.
No, you haven't eaten kaposhito from Ghana. That's why you're calling this hot. But that was the one thing I missed the most. The food, right? Nice, spicy Ghanaian food. And then I also missed family.
Yeah.
At that point, my sister that I come after, Janet, she was at UCC, Cape Coast. And then Roland, when I was leaving Ghana, was teaching up in the north. My twin, though, had already left Ghana about 6 years before I left.
Before you left?
Yeah, she left for the UK.
Did she also go via a US visa?
No, she went to the UK.
Okay. So she went to the UK?
Yes, so she's in the UK. And then I have 2 older sisters, Olive in Takoradi, Lillian in Accra.
How does your mother count you? Does she count the twin as one, or she counts you one after the other?
She counts us separate.
Separately.
So when she adds up all her children, she counts us. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure you get that question a lot. Right?
Yes.
Oh, do they count you as one, or you?
Yeah.
So at what point did you start writing your books? And I'm very fascinated with how you write meticulously about Ghana's democracy. you talk about elections, you talk about the presidents that we have had. In fact, a note from the Times Square is even one of those that even fascinates me even most. At what point in your life did you write your books? Which one was first?
So the first book was on former President Kufuor. And at that point, I'd been doing a lot of short analysis here and there using the Afrobarometer survey. Then I noticed that over 3 rounds of the Afrobarometer survey during Kufuor's time, you see a very interesting pattern where in 2002, Ghanaians had very positive reviews of him and his government on a whole number of issues. Then by 2005, it had gone down. And then by 2008, which continues to remain one of the best Afrobarometer reviews that we've had in Ghana, I said to myself, I think I want to write about this former president. I really want to hear his story and understand how he responds to the public's reaction to his presidency from, we sort of, quote unquote, we love you, we don't think things are going well, and then he ends up on this extraordinary note of good reviews, positive reviews, high ratings on how he managed the country. So that was what pushed me to write that first book, Notes from the Public Square. I got a chance to interview.
Yeah, those from the public square. I keep saying Times Square.
Yeah, and I got a chance to interview him. His story, very fascinating. And let me give you a little giveaway. So my next book, which I'll launch probably sometime in late September or early October, is on the current president, John Mahama.
Really?
But when I started on that project, he hadn't declared his intention to run, and he hadn't won the presidency. But there are parts to the presidency very different, very fascinating.
Why the jump from ex-President Kufuor then to the current president?
Because I also wanted to include the voices of the president in whatever narrative I was constructing about them using primarily data from Afrobarometer. For example, for the former president, Mills, may his soul rest in peace, I didn't know how I could get that voice of his. And then I think at some point I did think of also writing about former President Rawlings. I thought his story would have been an interesting one, to capture. But then by the time I was done with the Kufuor book and was thinking of who next, and I said, well, I think I want to capture John Mahama's story before, and then maybe someday I'll get back to him. Unfortunately, he also passed, yeah.
It feels like we've just zoned into I cannot help myself but zone into the governance conversation. I was holding myself, but I cannot talk to Dr. Kwapon and not talk about the country, governance and politics. But you're watching PM Personality Profiles. Stay with me, just a quick breather. We'll be back. Welcome back to Personality Profile. I hope that you have not missed a lot, but if you did, we still have some more to talk about. I'm very biased towards Dr. Kwapon. Why? Because he's the only one that gives me all the angles when there's a political conversation happening. When there is a policy in this country, he's one of the few persons who can just tear it apart. Let me see the nuances, the parts that I would have missed out if I was trying to analyze that policy. But back to your personal life, Doc. What is that one life-changing thing that has happened to you, that has changed your perspective to life, that has changed nearly everything that you used to see in life?
So I dropped out of my first PhD program. And I say to friends and family that we have to get to a point in life where we make it okay for even our heroes to fail. So I'd finished my master's in Atlanta. At the end of my master's, I could feel that mentally I was tired and needed to take a break. I always knew I wanted the PhD, but I didn't think I wanted it immediately. My mentor is from Cameroon, and so Dr. Ilonge kept saying, well, you're still young, the energy is still there. If you're saying you really want this PhD, then I think you should go ahead and do it now. So I applied to a number of schools. I weighed all of the offers, and I got a very good offer from Howard University in Washington, D.C. But then I got to Howard, and it was just the struggle, not academically, but I could just tell that I just wasn't ready. I always say Howard University took really good care of their graduate students. The funding was great, the support, the financial support was amazing, but I was struggling the entire first semester. I ended up doing well, but I just knew something wasn't working in terms of my mental, emotional state. But I was also afraid to leave because I just didn't know how I would tell my mom. I would tell my older sisters, some of my friends, that I went to start a PhD and here I am dropping out of a PhD program. So I battled it out. I finished my first semester, but by the second semester, it just wasn't working out. So in the middle of my second semester, one day I just walked to the Office of Graduate Studies and I put in a full and complete withdrawal. In fact, the vice, I think he was the vice dean, he was a Ghanaian, Professor Glakpe. So he asked me, what is wrong? And I said, it's just not working out. And it's not working out because of academics, but I just need a mental break from this. So I left, went to work in state government in Ohio. Then 2 years later, went to George Mason. It took me 6.5 years to finish the PhD. Along the line, I had to even rewrite one of my comprehensive exams. I failed comparative politics the first time, so I had to rewrite it, a year later. But I think in all of those, both leaving Howard, starting the PhD again, failing comprehensive exams in comparative politics, but then rewriting, passing, I think in life, even for our greatest heroes, we need to make room for them to be able to say, I'm struggling, to be able to say, I can't do this, or I have to do it at another time, even as we encourage them. Because you can imagine, when I failed, of course, I talk about my mom a lot. I tend to use her in a lot of my life stories. But I recall even calling my mom, telling her that I had failed comparative politics and needed to rewrite it.
By this time, did she know that you had withdrawn before?
So this time she knew she knew I'd left Howard, I'd gone to work, and now I was at George Mason University in Virginia. And so you have to do 2 fields. So I did public admin and comparative politics. I passed PA and I had to do comparative politics. But when I called my mom and I said, I failed comparative politics, and she says, oh my goodness, this is the first time that you've done something academically that you failed. I've never heard you use the word, I failed an exam. And for a brief moment, it was very difficult. But again, it's one of those life lessons I keep saying that as we journey through life, even for our greatest heroes, we have to give them room to be able to once in a while make quote-unquote a mistake, because you also learn from those low moments.
I was just about to tell you apart that, oh my goodness, for a researcher, for somebody who talks so much about academics, how could you fail on the first attempts, and how could you even withdraw and all of that? But it's refreshing that you're talking about it, because for a minute it was sending some shivers down my spine that, okay, if this man has failed, then it looks like I just might fail before. But it looks like now I'm not afraid to fail as well. And eventually when will you say was the big breakthrough for you in Ghana, that you have become a source or a point of reference that, okay, let me hear what Dr. Kwapon is saying about this policy?
CDD Ghana. So I started off as a non-resident fellow in 2017. And then when Professor Kwesi Prempeh took over as the executive director, he rolled out a program called Democracy and Development Fellow. And so I was accepted as a D&D fellow with CDD Ghana. I was always also putting up things on my Facebook page using Afrobarometer data. And then I thought of a project I could do as part of my fellowship. And CDD Ghana has a blog. So I said, well, let me start writing pieces for the CDD Ghana blog. I wrote a piece, I think it was on the judiciary. Then one day, Dr. Kuja Asante sent me a message and said, there's a gentleman from Daily Graphic who is asking if he can reproduce the piece, Albert, God bless his heart. Because when Albert got my contact and I said, yes, it's okay, you can reproduce the piece, then he says to me, oh, Doc, Adanka, if we get more, it will be good, though. So we agreed that once a week, I'd write a piece for Daily Graphic. And that became the biggest breakthrough. And this is since 2022, thereabout. I've been writing twice a week for Daily Graphic. Sometimes something would come up. Albert would reach out to me. He would say, can we get a quick one, 200 words, 250 words. Then I think I appeared on Newsfile once, the AM show. And then now sometimes I have to run away from the phone a little bit because
it gets tiring.
Yes.
I'm not sure we understand what you have to go through to be able to come and break the policies
and
down.
And especially, too, because of the time difference. So there are times where the time difference, US-Ghana, is like 4 hours or 5 hours. So depending on how early the show is. So, for example, the AM show, where is one of the places I've appeared very regularly with Benjamin and now Sweetie as well. But there are times where I have to be up like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a 5-hour time difference. But
when you're in Ghana, how long do you jet lag before you get back in shape?
Oh, no. Within a day.
Because I've done it very frequently.
Yes, within a day, I'm fine.
Plus, you're Ghanaian. When you get here, the weather, you just adjust.
Especially when you come a lot more often now, I think it's much easier to adjust.
Currently, what's going on in Ghana that has your attention?
So I've written a few pieces on what I call democracy's difficult days. Now, globally, regionally, there's been concerns about the state of democracy. And I know that in a place like Ghana, once we have a successful, peaceful election, especially if it's a turnover election where you get the loser's consent, we tend to, it sort of renews our faith that all is well. And yes, we've made some very positive strides over the course of the Fourth Republic. But I also think that there are some challenges with our democracy architecture that we need to have a lot more conversation about. In 2023, as part of my democracy project, I was trying to work with political parties on something I call the Democracy Pledge, right? To take the findings from my book where I identified 6 key challenges facing Ghana's democracy and get them to make a pledge on saying, for example, our institutions are facing what I believe is a serious crisis of confidence, perceptions of corruption, low levels of trust as captured by Afrobarometer. So take it and say, what specific things can I do as a democracy pledge to resurrect Ghana from some of these challenges that its democracy has?
If you did that, how would we hold them accountable?
So my goal was, if you can get them to put it in their manifestos and commit to it, then whoever wins the election, you can keep, the project's idea was, okay, if you win, we'll go back to the pledge and regularly track and see the extent to which you are keeping faith with that pledge or not. But the growing, it's not so much the growing dissatisfaction, if you look at Afrobarometer, but it's the gap between support for democracy and satisfaction with democracy. So in Afrobarometer round 1 in 1999, that was the first round, the gap between support and satisfaction was about 22 percentage points. So how much we really want democracy was 22% higher than how much we said we were satisfied with democracy. And it improved by 2008, at the end of Kufuor's tenure, for the first time, satisfaction with democracy was slightly higher, 2 points higher than even our support for democracy. Then it's gone through some difficult times. But as of 2024, when we did Afrobarometer Round 10, the gap is back to 23%.
But for somebody who writes and talks about democracy a lot, are you surprised about one of the research instruments, maybe Global Info Analytics or one of them, one of the popular ones, that is suggesting that it looks like Ghanaians are quite interested? If you ask, there's some growing appetite for a military regime. Are you concerned about that? And are you surprised, maybe I should ask?
So I'm both concerned and a little surprised. But if you probe the data further, you notice that what Ghanaians are saying about democracy and non-democratic alternatives is more nuanced, right?
Okay.
So when you ask about democracy, still, even as of 2024, when the level of satisfaction was at its lowest, about 49% saying they were satisfied with democracy, still 76% said democracy is preferable to any other form of government. What Afrobarometer does is to test our faith in democracy, they give you 3 alternatives that are non-democratic: one-man rule, military rule, and one-person rule, right? One-party rule, sorry. On the question of military, so in 2024, I think it's now at about 68% who still reject military rule, but it has dropped from a high of about 80-something. I think what raised concern most recently was that the question was asked, if democratically elected leaders abuse power, is it okay for the army to step in? And 51% said yes. But that 51%, if you break the data down further, they still say democracy is preferable to any other form of government. So the challenge we are facing is the support is there, but there's also a percentage who would say, as a temporary corrective measure, we will accept this alternative. So again, the other question is, should there be an intervention? What should happen? If military were to step in, what should happen? And majorities still say either sooner rather than later, we should transition back to civilian rule democracy. So when you tease out all of those nuances, I keep saying that Ghanaians have made their peace with democracy. What they've not made their peace with is what I call the democracy dividends, right? And that they need to start feeling it beyond just the basic freedoms that democracy guarantees, right?
Forgive me. I was just trying to hold myself, so we'll just have our personal conversation. But away from that, tell me, do you have any favorite food? Plus, wait, before we even go to the food, when you're not sitting by the book or you're in a library writing, doing research, what would you be doing?
I'll be watching soccer, well, football. I'm a big Chelsea fan. So I'll be watching football, writing all manner of commentary on Facebook.
Football?
Yes, if it doesn't go Chelsea's way.
Oh, goodness. I finally found somebody who supports my team.
Yes.
I mean, they've broken my heart over for some time now, but I'm loyal.
Yes. You catch me once in a while using some unprintable words about referees when I think they made a wrong call with Chelsea. So either I'm watching football, listening to music.
What kind of music do you like to listen to?
So this may sound odd. So I like 3 kinds of genres, right? So I'm a big fan of country music.
Okay, that's not odd.
Yes. And then,
for an academic, that's not odd.
So I love country music. I love reggae. So I actually, last year in New York, I actually attended a Buju Banton concert.
Oh.
I attended a Shaba concert. And then this year I saw Sean Paul and Shaggy in a concert in New York.
Hey.
Yes.
It looks like the further you went, the crazier and the shocking you got.
Yes. And then I also enjoy the old-time high life.
Okay.
Right? So yes, I enjoy hip life and the progressions we're seeing now, but I still go back to listen to the likes of Amachi Dede and
can
all
understand.
of that.
Yeah, I
Yes,
love
yes,
Amachi Dede too. That Lumba,
yes, Daddy
Kujonji.
Lumba.
Buju Banton, do you recall any of his songs that you like?
Yes. It's not an easy road.
Okay.
Yes, I like that.
Do you have personal reasons why that one is one of your?
Because of what he sings about, life's challenges, and also talks about one where, Mama used to send us to school, but it wasn't an easy road, things like that. Yeah, so.
Do you have any favorite foods?
So my favorite meal, I always say that my favorite meal is rice, so plain rice, yam, palm nut soup with all the, as someone would say, all the cosmetics. So dried fish, snails, crabs.
You're
yes, mekwang proper, yes. But it has to be a combination of rice and yam with.
Oh, so you're not eating these separately?
No. I'm eating it together. That's
why? Why though?
No.
You don't know?
But but this is how either rice with soup or yam with soup became my favorite meal. So I don't eat fufu.
Okay.
My mom would say, "Dear ye chikra no, ye bidi nenye right?" Okay. So I had a choice. You don't want to eat fufu, that's fine. You don't like fufu. I just couldn't. I don't know. I just couldn't get into the fufu eating thing. So I think the last time I tried fufu. Like class 2 or something. So what my mom would do is, whatever soup was being served with fufu that day, my choice was you can have it with rice or you can have it with yam. What are you going to do, right? Mm-hmm. Then she would say to you, "Oh, mini sikao." I used to find it odd as a kid when my mom would say she had no money.
Did you understand it?
Yes, because in my mind, every adult has money. So I would go away and I was like, sometimes I used to think, oh, she just doesn't want to do it for you. That's why she says she doesn't.
Yeah.
But then when you grow up, right? I have 2 daughters. Liza is 18, Jasmine is 16.
18 and 16?
Yeah, so Liza just finished her first year in university. Now, when you become an adult and you have kids, and
you understand.
Yes, you understand why sometimes your parents would have to say to you that they don't have money. But yes, that's how rice.
Any of your kids taking after your academia?
No, Liza is studying marketing and graphic design, so she's in the School of Business. And Jasmine is interested in STEM, so she's thinking about doing either microbiology or biochemistry.
Are they all in Ghana?
No.
Okay. I'm sure I can have this conversation on and on and on and on and on. But how are you often in Ghana?
So over the last maybe 5 years, at least twice in a year, I get the chance.
I'm glad that we're able to catch you at the early stage of this year. So the next time when I'm talking to you, maybe it'll be over the book launch.
Yes.
Yeah, just maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. But thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. Let us in a little bit into your life so that it's not all book.
Yes.
Thank you for talking to us, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, I know. You're welcome. I tell you, keep staying with me. I'll bring you another installment next week, okay? So stay well. Thank you for watching.